What's up YouTube? Eric Vasquez here from Teach Me to Design, and today I've got a question for you. Actually, it's a question for everybody out there who's watching this video. How many times have you sat down at your desk or stared at a blank page, just unsure of where to begin? Or maybe you've been working on a project relentlessly for hours, trying to squeeze every little last bit of creativity out, but it's just not happening. Now, in this video, I want to talk to you about this phenomenon that affects every creative out there at one point or another, called creative block. And in this video, we're going to talk about what creative block is, how it can affect us, but most importantly, what are some of the ways that we can work towards overcoming creative block to get back to doing the creative work that we love. So before we get started in today's video, please go ahead and smash that like button and be sure to subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Now, let's jump into it. Today we're going to be talking about creative block. Now, this is something that happens to the best of us. Maybe it's happened to you before. If it hasn't happened to you yet, it most likely will at some point. And creative block is something that affects almost every creative person I know at some point or another. But I also think that it's something that we don't really talk about very much in the industry, in graphic design and the creative fields and things like that. But it's really something that I think a lot of people can relate to. So I wanted to make this video not necessarily a tutorial, but just, some lessons, some experience, just sharing some things, that have worked for me before. But let's start off by actually defining what creative block is, what it looks like. Now, I tend to think of creative block as a barrier, either real or imagined, that keeps us from being able to tap into our creativity. I think of it as this overwhelming feeling of just being stuck and not really sure where to begin. And it really limits us and prevents us from creating new work. So regardless of what most people might think, especially folks who aren't creatives, creativity is not just a switch that we flip on and off. And oftentimes it's not a very clean process. We don't just sit down at our desks or our computers and wait for all these great ideas to flow out of us. Sometimes it can be hard. So some of the ways that I think, creative block can show up and what causes it can be a combination of things. But like I said, I think it's barriers, either real or imagined, most often that come up and cause this to strike. So real barriers can be anything from having a lot of stress in your life. Maybe you're going through a tough time. Maybe you're having financial stress, emotional stress. Maybe you're under a tight deadline or under the gun and the ideas just aren't coming. Or, what I refer to as the imagined sort of barriers are things that I would think of like perfectionism, imposter syndrome, any kind of negative self-talk where we're telling ourselves that, nothing we do is going to be that good anyway, or, no matter what we do, we're not going to be good enough. We are good enough, but sometimes we just need to take a step back, press pause, and hit the reset button. So these are some of the things that have worked well for me, and I hope that some of these tips can be helpful for you as well whenever you're trying to get past this creative block. So the first thing that I like to do when I'm feeling stuck is just change my surroundings. I'll grab a cup of coffee, grab some tea, whatever you prefer. I'll go in a different room, I'll grab a book, and I'll just sit down and read for a while. And I think that this sort of allows me to distract myself, right? It's like a nice form of escapism, but it also allows us to sort of listen to someone else's voice for a while, right? And I don't mean, literally, unless you're listening to an audiobook, which is also fine, but it allows us to read the words of someone else's perspective, right? We're thinking about what we're reading, we're engaging with the book. And I think in doing this, it allows us to sort of like let go of that tight grasp and that grip that we had on the creative problem that was causing us to feel stuck in the first place. So whatever kind of books you're into, I think that reading can be a really helpful way to just shake things up a little bit. Now, the second thing that I like to do if I'm feeling creative block and I just can't get my ideas out is I'll literally just go into a different room. I'll grab a blanket or a yoga mat, roll it out, and I'll meditate for a while. And for me personally, I like to use an app on my phone called Insight Timer, which is a really cool app, actually. You should check it out. This video isn't sponsored by Insight Timer, by the way, in case you're wondering. But what I love about the app is the fact that it allows you to do timed meditation practices where you can focus on your breathing, you can do guided meditations, and it's really just about centering yourself and becoming present. So sometimes it's easier to do this than others. I know we can all get busy, but I like to do this every day. I kind of make it a habit, a routine, if you will. And some days I can do it no problem. Other times I'll try to do it and maybe I'll get a little distracted, but my dogs are a happy distraction that I always welcome. So, this is kind of a nice thing, but other times, I'll just put them in the other room for a little while so I can focus on my breathing, focus on grounding myself. And I think that this can be a really helpful way too, to just kind of get away from our electronics for a while, right? So the next thing that I like to do anytime that I'm feeling stuck in that creative rut is I'll just mix things up, right? And what I mean by that is we're so used to doing everything digitally now, right? We're staring at the screen, we're staring at our phones, iPads, your video games, whatever you're into. So what I like to do is mix things up and I'll play around with different mediums. So that could be sitting down with a sketch pad for a while, grabbing some pens or markers or pencils, and literally just sketching and seeing what happens, And I think it's really just about doing something tactile with your hands. For some people, you can journal, you can write. I'll even, go and mess around with my keyboard for a while and just, hitting different notes, chords, progressions, hearing the music, I think can sometimes be really helpful because these kind of things allow you to still be creative, but you're doing it in a different way that you're maybe not normally doing. So I think that changing your mediums and experimenting with different creative outlets can be a really great way to get out of a creative rut. And that's one of the reasons too why I believe that having hobbies is so important. So ask yourself, when was the last time that you did something creative that you weren't getting paid for? Right? And if it's something that you enjoy, then go and do that thing for a little while. You deserve to have that in your life. Now, another thing that I'll do if I'm feeling really stuck is I'll just need to step back away from the computer for a while, especially if I'm feeling frustrated, and I'll go, work out for a little bit. I actually have a pull-up bar in my doorway. Don't judge me. I live in a one-bedroom apartment in New York City. What do you expect, right? You have to get creative with the space sometimes. I'll literally just go for an hour and a half, however long I have, and I'll go work out. I'll throw some weights around. I'll push myself. I'll sweat and it'll really just feel great. And it just allows you to, open your mind, and it gives you some space to just make connections and see patterns that you might not have seen if you were just sitting down staring at a screen and trying to, force your way through the same creative problem. And, it's like when they talk about the law of diminishing returns, right? At a certain point, just sitting there and trying to force your way through something is only going to allow you to make incremental progress at a certain point. So I'm a big advocate of working out, exercising, especially if you spend a lot of time sitting at your desk like I do. So whatever your jam is, whether it's riding a bike, yoga, Pilates, rollerblading, any of those things, just find a way to get up and move. All right. And the next thing that I like to do if I'm feeling really stuck and I just can't get something right is I'll literally just, throw on my jacket, go outside and get some fresh air. Now, again, just changing your environment, changing your surroundings, especially during the course of the pandemic that we've been in, is a really helpful and useful thing. Get some fresh air, get some vitamin D. I'll take my dogs for a walk, sometimes for a jog around the block, depending on how I'm feeling that day. But a lot of times when I do these things, it allows me to just come back to my station, to my desk, feeling recharged, refreshed, and ready to go. So I think at the heart of a lot of these things, it's really about just finding opportunities for stillness in our day. We're, so distracted all the time between our devices and TVs and emails and messages and meetings, all these things that we don't really have a lot of opportunities in our day for calm. But it's in those moments of stillness where oftentimes we'll be able to think of a problem differently. Maybe we'll be struck with inspiration. An idea will come to us in those moments when we least expect them. So I just wanted to take some time to share some of these things with you because these are things that have really helped me a lot, especially over the last couple of years when I've been struggling with creative block and trying to just, do quality work. Because like I said, it doesn't always just happen as soon as you sit down. So try to be patient with yourself, be kind with yourself, and be compassionate with yourself. Try some of these things out, right? Just disengage from the problem for a little bit, give yourself a chance to regroup, and come back and attack the problem feeling refreshed. So I hope that this video has been helpful for you. I hope that you found some of these tips to be useful, and hopefully they're things that you can implement into your own life and into your own creative journey. If you did find this video helpful, please go ahead and smash that like button. Be sure to subscribe to the channel and click that notification bell so you never miss a video. Thank you so much for watching. This is Eric Vasquez here from Teach Me to Design, and we'll see you next time.